Greetings, everyone. It's Katira Poland. I am the CEO of Love for Words and the hostess of Editor Knows Best podcast here on Anchor. Anchor is a free platform. You have access to tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. You can also distribute Anchor will distribute the podcast for you through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other channels. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. And lastly, it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Make sure you download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thanks so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Editor Knows Best. My name is Katira Poland. I am the creator and also the hostess of Editor Knows Best, a podcast specifically for writers and authors. And today we do have a very special guest. But before we get to that, the show airs Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Anchor, anchor.fm/Editor Knows Best, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and several other channels. So today's guest is a native of Youngstown, Ohio. He spends his life trying to acquire knowledge to help others understand what is amiss in the United States and the world. His writings and his talks betray his sincere belief that there is a way to make things better. The writer's faith, hope, curiosity, and optimism about the human condition throughout the globe began Vincent A. Golphin's interest in the writing field. He also has earned his doctorate in creative writing and literary and cultural studies from Binghamton University, and he's used the knowledge to expand his reputation as a poet, an essayist, and a fiction writer. Thank you so much for joining us today, Vincent. It's a pleasure to have you.
I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey to becoming a writer, and if that was something that you always envisioned for yourself?
Um, well, like a lot of journeys, in life, things ebb and flow. So, like for me, I think I started out writing when I was in grade school, and I would just write little things. In fact, I haven't, pardon me, I'm sorry, I haven't been able to find it. But one of the first things that I ever wrote was when I was in eighth grade. I wrote a poem about this clunky school bus that we used to be on. This is like the raggediest bus in the world. And we would ride it, and it was like bus four. I'll never forget that part because, there was the story of bus four. And, I didn't think that, oh gosh, I'm going to grow up and be a writer. But as I matured, got into high school, because I was always a reader, and then college, and when writing was mandatory, and then of course graduate studies, postgraduate studies, and all of that. Um, I kept toying around with the idea, and in fact, that's why I became a journalist at one point. Okay, I was a journalist because Hemingway had been a journalist. So I thought, well, what better way to like teach yourself to write and write quickly and be able to uh, have a sense of what can happen with words. So I went ahead and, uh, got into that profession, did okay, moderately well, won a couple of awards and everything. And then came out of that uh, and I had been teaching all along. I've been teaching for a long time, nearly half a century. But came out of that, just started teaching, and as a teacher, kept part of what I had to do was to write, but then I wanted to do a lot more creative writing, and so then I got my doctorate in creative writing. I'd been doing things all along, so I put that portfolio forward. It earned me a slot in a doctoral program. I got the doctorate, and then after that, moved out. And so here we are today. I am now, believe it or not, they call it being retired, but I have more work to do than ever before. Still writing, And I do a lot of editing. I do a lot of work on other people's projects,
Okay.
everything from dissertations, theses, and creative works. A lot of times I find myself, and people come to me. Most of my clients have come word of mouth. Okay, I've never really set up a huge campaign. That's how I ended up being called the book doctor. Okay, because people would say, well, you should get a hold of that guy. And it used to be when I was in academia full time, they would say, call the professor. Okay.
Mhm.
And because everybody would know that, okay, the professor is at such and such a university, he might be able to help you, call him.
Mhm.
And I did a few projects in that, some that were really wild. And then after I retired, I went ahead and I kept doing things. People would come to me and say, so told me that you are really good, and I think I want to be a writer, or I think I have a book here. What can we do with it? And so basically, I take their manuscript and I either uh, uh, reimagine it for them, or I help them to structure it so that because they do the writing. I don't do the writing.
Right.
Okay. That's one of my hard, fast rules that I tell people from the beginning. This is your book. Because a lot of times people will come to you and they'll be like, please, please, write my book.
Right.
Okay. Or they're not saying write my book. They're saying, I want to write a book. But they're saying, well, what should it look like? What should I
Right.
do?
Right.
And so the writer always has to make the last choice. You know,
Exactly.
if you tell me that you want your book written in all caps, I will look at it and I will say, well, I'll explain to you why that might not be a great idea.
Right.
But if that's what you want, it's your book. Okay, do what you like. If you want to tell me that, well, I want this handled by a mainstream publisher, I can tell you exactly what it needs to look like, how to prepare your manuscript. I'll work with you, et cetera, et cetera. No guarantees, of course.
Right.
Okay, but I'll work with you. If you want to, and again, I work on everything. I've worked on marketing letters. I've worked on, like I said, student essays. You know, those essays they have to write nowadays to get into
For
college.
sure.
Why I want to be in college. Okay.
Mhm.
And again, I've had students come to me and say, if you write my essay, I'll pay you triple, you know. But I don't do people's homework. That's my response. I don't do
Right.
people's homework.
Right.
Okay. And I guess I'm talking too much, but I just wanted to give you a very complete answer to your question.
No, thank you so much for that information. The audience typically consists of authors and writers who may be new to the field or their experience and they just want to know more. So your answer was perfect. I would love for you to share a little bit more about how you transition into the editing space because again, I'm an editor as well, but some of our listeners have questions about editing. So what would you recommend to a writer or author who's looking to make that transition and how did you do that?
Well, first of all, most people don't realize that editing is an art. I mean,
Absolutely.
you might have gone to school and studied English, got a BA in English or something.
Right.
That doesn't make you an editor.
Nope.
The trick to being a great editor is to be able to not have your mark on the manuscript. It must look like the writer. Okay. And what you're doing is it's just sort of like what Michelangelo did. He would see a block of marble and he would be able to see the image or the figure like the Pietà or something like that. He would be able to see that within that block of marble. And most of what he did was chink away at the things that didn't add to that image. Okay. And so when you have the final product, you know, you could sit back and you could look at it and you'd be like, yes, I always knew that was there. It's just beautiful, you
Right.
know, but it's not yours. It
Right.
belongs, and you have to really, you know, I know I keep saying that, but it's really hard because people want to turn over the ownership of their manuscript to you. Okay, constantly. They're like, well, if you're going to guarantee me that if you edit this, it will be perfect, right? And you can't do that. Okay,
No.
just like I tell people, there are a lot of, because I'm not an inexpensive person. So I tell people there are a lot of editors out there, and not every editor is right for you. You have to find the editor that suits you.
Exactly.
Okay. Because some writers and editors just won't mix. So you can't just go to anyone. But my thing has been in the past, I'll joke with people and I'll say, okay, well, I'll tell you what, maybe you're not ready, because they'll balk at the price. They'll be like, well,
Yes.
I don't know. And
Right.
I'll say, I'll tell you what we do. All right. Once you're done with the rest, come back to the best. All right. Because that's really it. It's like,
For
I
sure.
can, I will do for you what no one else will do.
For
And I'm
sure.
not bragging. I will, I will be patient with you. I will guide you. I'll give you other information. I'm not trying to like measure you out on the dime, because I've seen people, particularly um, non-white people, who want to be authors, and they get taken advantage of. Okay, and I've seen one woman brought me a manuscript. Oh God, it was horrible, and she had paid this person $700 to edit this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this person, it was a novel, and sort of a novel memoir type thing. But anyway, it was a novel,
Mm-hmm.
and she paid, and this person gave her back a manuscript with no punctuation. It was just words and lines. There was no paragraphs. There were no paragraphs. And then in the end, the person just simply said, well, I don't really like the material
Mm-hmm.
anyway. I don't do this kind of material. So you just have to take what you got,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Right. Right.
And that was like, again, another client that came to me. Somebody told this person, hey, there's this professor. See if you can go get him.
Mm-hmm.
He might be able to help you. All right. And so these are the kinds of things that I've seen. So to do away with that. But if a person wants to be an editor, the first thing you have to do is you have to lower your ego. Okay. Because it's not about you, it's about the other person. Secondly, you have to understand their goals. And if their goals or their product is not something that you're really able to open yourself to, and I say open yourself, I didn't say like or anything like that, then the best thing to do is not be involved with it. And if it doesn't feel right, I don't get into it, because it's like it will be a disaster in the end. It will be an absolute disaster.
Sure.
Same thing with a client. If a client comes to me and says, well, I want you to help me edit my book, but I don't really know what I want it to be. I don't really know how no, that's a danger sign.
For sure.
Because if this person doesn't know, you're in for a magical mystery tour. Okay, you're going to be all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you so much for those nuggets and that information. And I do agree that being an editor requires humility. And I always tell my clients, like you said, at the end of the day, this is your manuscript. So what you want in there will stay in there. What you want taken out will go. And
Right.
then also that the editor is like a silent partner. So like you said, you're not supposed to be able to tell that, oh, an editor, worked with this author. We want it to be authentic to the author's voice. And we're here to make it as best as we can. So I also agree when you said we don't edit to perfection. And my saying is I edit for excellence, not perfection. I'm not perfect. Microsoft Word is not perfect. Grammarly is not perfect. So I'm not going to guarantee you a perfect manuscript. There are clients who don't agree with that. They don't like to hear that. But like you said, you have to find the editor that works for you. So, like I have a consultation up front, we have a phone call, and you both have to be on the same page. So it's not just, okay, the author wants to work with you. The editor also has to want to work with that author. It's a partnership. So you have
right.
to
And
make
also,
sure. Yeah, go ahead.
excuse me, also expectations. I mean,
for sure.
Have you ever had someone bring you a manuscript and it's a mess? And they're like, but I need it in a week. Okay.
Right.
And you'd be like, well, wow. And you just have to tell them, I can't do this in a week.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I've had people come to me and they'd be like, but you're so slow. Well, it takes time.
Absolutely.
Okay. Like when you're working on something And I'll tell people, I'll say, I tell you what, if you want to pay my bills,
Right.
all right, I will edit this quickly for you. You pay everything. I don't have to work. I don't have to do any other jobs. I don't have to edit anyone else's stuff. You're paying for all my time.
Right.
I'll be glad to do it like lightning. Okay. But if I have to do everything else, and
Exactly.
it's not necessarily pushing you to the side,
No.
it's that when I look at your manuscript, I have to think about what I'm seeing. I can't just, you don't just say, oh, okay, this needs a comma. Oh, this word is misspelled. Oh, this is it. No,
Right.
you're
Right.
looking at it and you're reading it as the reader would read it,
Yes.
so that you go
Exactly.
back and you're saying to the person, okay, when I give you this page, this is my best shot at giving you something that I know, uh, you could publish. Or if you're trying to go to mainstream, that I know an agent would look at and be willing to say, well, maybe I'll take a chance on this.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right.
Um, and that's it.
Yeah. And then the other piece that you touched on as well as is clients who scoff at the price. So one of the things that I've grown into, and one of the things that I now say frequently, is that editing is an investment, not an expense. So if you change your mindset to that, then you will realize the value in editing. And I don't know that a lot of writers and authors realize it. They just see the price tag and they run the other direction. But like you said, there is value behind editing, and you just have to learn how important it is. And you also get what you pay for. So there are editors who do charge, who are considered cheap editors. They don't charge as much, but you'll have to journey through that and figure out that just because usually if they're charging less, you're getting less value. So just don't go with the cheapest all the time. Make sure you do your research. And then, like you said, depending on, if you're working with an editor of prestige, you would expect to pay a pretty penny because they have the expertise. They're going to make sure that your manuscript looks and sounds good, and that it makes sense. And like you said, not just the grammar and spelling, which is what people assume, but there's so much more. The plot, making sure
Right.
there's no redundancies and all of that. So that's another thing I wanted to tack onto that you did mention.
Right. No, I
So,
mean,
oh, go ahead.
editing is, I'm sorry, am I going too long or whatever?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, editing is done in drafts, okay? And
Yes.
that's one thing most people are not used to. They're thinking like, well, I said, well, here's your first draft. I've gone through, but these are the corrections I want you to make,
Right.
my suggestions for other things. And then we'll do a second draft.
Hmm.
And they're like, what? You mean you didn't finish it? And I'm like, no, I have to see what you come
Right.
up with once you finish the first draft. Then we'll
Right.
do the second. And then there's a last one where we polish. Okay. And they're like, oh man, this is taking too. That's what I said, like, well, this is taking too long.
Hmm.
But I ask people all the time, have you ever read um, indie publications, and particularly those that there was a craze at one point where you had a lot of um, mainstream publishers even who created like a black division where they could turn out these novels, these black romance novels,
Hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. Have you
Hmm.
ever read those and seen mistake after mistake after mistake, misspellings and all kinds of stuff?
Right. Right.
And that's because even like with Amazon, they take no responsibility for editing your work. They
No.
will publish whatever it is you
Right.
bring them.
Right.
Okay. So you have to polish it. And if you're really serious about what you put out there, or if you have a sense of yourself as a writer, you would be embarrassed. Now, everyone, again, understand, I understand. Everyone, you can miss a word, you can miss two words, you can miss three, maybe. But when you turn page after page after page, and there are mistakes everywhere, there's even words missing, then that's not good. That's not good. And that's part of a proofreading thing. That's why some people don't think that proofreading is worth it, because once you finish editing, then you need to proof it. Um, and again, that's another thing that I do.
Okay.
And it's painstaking.
For the audience, do you mind telling them the difference between editing and proofreading? Because again, some of our listeners may not know that there's a difference or what the difference is.
Sure. Editing is doing auto body work. You bring me a car with a messed up fender, I can pound it out. I can, sand it off. I can smooth it. I can repaint it. Okay. Proofing is polishing it. Okay. So that now it's repainted. You want it not only to look like the other part of the car, but you want the whole thing to come together and you want it to shine. And that's what proofing does. Proofing catches or tries to catch when you've left out a word. It looks at the logic of something that might have been written and make sure it's consistent. I've had manuscripts before where, for one reason or another, nobody's fault or anything, pages drop out. And
Mm-hmm.
so you go from one page, all of a sudden you're somewhere else.
Right.
You're like, well, wait, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
And like that, go back to the other thing, um, numbering. A lot of independent authors number their own books or set it up, and those things are not the easiest. Like in Word, it's really not easy to have proper continuity, to have proper page numbers. And when you lay out a manuscript, it's also not easy. So once you have have it laid out and you create a galley, a proof copy of the final manuscript, you also need to go through that and polish it. Make sure every word is exactly the word that you want, that pages are right, that headings are correct. Everything is there, and that can make the difference. Okay. The same thing with looking at, and you have to look when you proof, and this is what makes it so tedious. You have to look at every single word, okay, and make sure that it's right. Because again, what happens, I'm sure you've experienced this, is the trick of the eye.
Yes.
When you read so many words, after a while, you see what you want to see. And so, like, even a sentence, sometimes you read a sentence and you can read it twice and you think, oh, okay, this is it. I got it. And you go back and you look at it, you'll be like, well, wait, there's a word missing.
Right.
But I know that word was there. I remember. Okay. And no, yes, your mind remembers it because that's what you intended it to say.
For sure.
But it's missing. And that happens in personal correspondence. I'm sure
Definitely.
you send emails or something and people say, well, did you really mean to write that?
Mm-hmm.
That way?
Right.
And, of course, now and then the other heinous thing is autocorrect.
Yes.
Have you ever had something autocorrect for you and it's not the word that you wanted?
For sure.
But it looked like it to the machine, so it just the word.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. So one thing that I just also want to share again is that for the writer and the author, again, the manuscript belongs to you. So even once you get edits and proofs back, you should be looking it over again. Again, like he said, the editor or proofreader missed something, or maybe they misspelled the name or anything really. So you should be taking responsibility to make sure that the manuscript meets your expectations. It's not a drop it in the editor's lap and everything is perfect from there once they send it back to you. So make sure that you are, you take your craft seriously. It's a reflection of you. So, if it goes to Amazon and there's mistakes, or it goes to you're self-publishing, it's a reflection on you. So just make sure that you don't just assume that it's perfect and ready to go just because it's been edited or proofread by a professional.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's when it comes to proofing, if you could afford it, it's good to have more than one person proof it.
Yes.
Okay. Plus, as author, you should look at it yourself. Because again, it's your book. You always want to make certain that this is saying exactly what you want it to say.
Right. And just to clarify, this is specifically for those who are self-published or like freelance authors. So if you're with a traditional publisher, they do have a team of editors, a team of professionals who will recheck and check. And there's less creative control for the author when traditionally publishing. But as Vincent and I are speaking, we are speaking specifically to those who are self-publishing, who
Right.
retain all of the rights and don't have a traditional publisher who has other restrictions and regulations regarding your book.
But let me add one more thing, though,
Okay.
too. In this current climate, I mean, again, 40 years ago when I was doing things, you had even the biggest publishers, Random House, that type of thing. They had platoons of writers and
Yes.
editors and things. Nowadays, most publishers don't have huge armies of people working in their offices, less and less all the time. And so that makes you more valuable as a writer when you can turn out copy that's virtually flawless.
Yes.
Okay. Because yes, they're going to make changes.
Right. Exactly.
Don't know, they're going to make changes. But the thing is that you want to be able to give them something where if there are mistakes in spelling, you've done the very best you can, and it's negligible. There's only a few here or there, or if there's something missing, it only happens once or something like that. But they don't have time in not only large publishing houses, but even mid-size and independent publishers, small press. They don't have time to go over manuscripts, okay? And to so when people look at your work, you want them to see the best possible publication.
For sure. Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. So I did see in your biography that you have also contributed to anthologies. Do you mind telling our listeners what an anthology is? And for those who might be interested in contributing, what do you recommend?
Well, an anthology is any book, whether fiction or nonfiction, that features a collection of writers on a topic. Okay. And they're becoming, a lot more people are producing anthologies nowadays, a lot of writers on all kinds of subjects. And so what I would recommend is as you go through Facebook or as you go through places where you have writers sites, writers groups, you look for calls for submissions. And then, and there are all kinds. There are some of them, they charge a fee, others are free. And they're constantly looking for calls for submissions. And also, there can be topical. Like, for example, if you're excited and you feel something about like the new developments in Black womanhood, okay, in fact, this is an anthology I just ran up on. There's a play that you can, there are calls out there that say we want fiction, essays, whatever relation to that, and you send your stuff in. You meet the deadlines and that type of thing. But again, in those kinds of circumstances, if you want them to love you, give them something that's like nearly flawless. Yes. Okay, because then you become easy to work with. I don't know people who I've done anthologies before, not just contributing, but I've also pulled them together. I've edited works, and it's a nightmare. Okay, because people will give you things, and sometimes they need to be rewritten.
Yes,
and then it gets to be humorous because some people are absolutely like, no, my words are sacred. Do not touch anything that I've done. I want it done this way. And you'd be like, but this is really not working out.
Right.
Okay. And sometimes, yes, you will face rejections. They will say, well, what you have doesn't quite work, or, so one thing I will say to writers, people, because when we started talking about career as a writer. The main thing you have to get used to as a writer is rejection. Anybody that wants to be a writer that doesn't want people to say no, then you need to go drive a cab or something, find something else to do, because lots of people are going to say no to you. And it has nothing, you don't take it personal. It has nothing to do with, well, I'm not good enough. Okay. Don't think like that. Just think about what it is that you want to express and express it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you play the game like, oh, well, what is it people want to read?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, your writing will be lifeless. Okay, it will be,
Yes.
it will be, yeah, it will look like a fish, it will smell like a fish, but it basically is dead. Okay, it's
Mm-hmm.
not live, it's not alive. When you start writing and saying what you want to say,
Mm-hmm.
it, it comes alive, and
Right.
that's the thing that editors can connect with, and it also makes an anthology better. And the main thing I like about anthologies, and as you say, I've been lately these years, I've been doing more of those
Mm-hmm.
than I have um, in cranking out. I mean, I'm still writing my own stuff, but I don't really get it published right away. I send things out. I'm looking at agents and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But these anthologies, there's tons of them. And what you do is you just, put yourself. And the main thing is you say to yourself, um, I'm just doing the best I can. So you don't put pressure on yourself. A lot of writers end up leaving writing, or they get frozen in their careers,
Right.
develop what they call writer's block,
Yes.
because they're trying to please other people,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And
Mm-hmm.
my main advice would be, please yourself. If
Right.
you have a story, tell it.
Right.
Enjoy telling it. And then that will be a good story.
Right. And I just want to share also that a lot of new writers or even new business owners, one of the issues that they have is identifying their target market. So someone will ask, "So who's your target market?" And we have that cliche, everyone. If you're targeting to everyone, you're not going to connect to anyone. So
Exactly.
figure out who you want to read the book. Not I would recommend that. But another question is ask, what would you want to read? And you'll naturally attract people who are interested in whatever you're writing about. So I definitely agree that you don't want to override your opinion of what you're writing or the importance of your role in what you're writing. But you also do want to consider your target market. So it's a delicate balance, but I
It
just want,
really is,
yeah.
because you have to also, as you mentioned that, it occurred to me that I might have overplayed that angle. You have to listen.
Yes.
Okay, learn to hear what people are saying. There's a difference. If I look at something you've written, Katira, and I say, well, I think this can really be better if you try to introduce this topic in there.
Right.
Okay, now, some people are going to hear that as, oh, well, you hated it. And you just, or, well, you want to change the whole thing. This is not what I want. You want to do this whole thing.
Right.
And they don't see that, okay, in the first instance and in the second instance, I
Hmm.
was just offering a suggestion.
Right.
It's up to you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And it has nothing to do with whether I hate it or not. It's, do
Right.
you hate it?
Right.
All right.
Right.
Is this something that you like? And if you like it, stay with it. And
Right.
of course, the business side too, that's a difficulty, because again, I'm much more artist than manager. I'm not, I can churn out, I can do, but my friends who are more business oriented tell me all the time that I need a manager, because quite honestly, and this is probably going to really sound bad. Number one, I don't like asking for money. Okay.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
number two, I tend to, I'm good for a sob story.
Okay.
So I have people in my life
Uh-oh.
that cut me off from that. Okay. Who will be like, wait a minute. You agreed to work for a dime and a cent.
Uh-oh.
Okay. And so you're gonna have to do better than that. All right.
All right.
And and
Well,
and it's a process.
you heard it from the horse's mouth, listeners. He gave you So Vincent, don't be surprised if you get inbox some stories. But no, thanks so much for being honest about that and sharing that. We all have things that we struggle with, and I appreciate that you were comfortable enough to share that with me and also our listeners. So that is awesome. One of the things that I've learned on my journey as an editor, going back to what you said about suggestions, is early on it was just, okay, this doesn't look right to me, I'm going to change it. 4 years in, now I realize, okay, I don't need to make this change. What I can do is put a comment on the side of in the margin and say, this is what I think you should do. This is something you should consider. How about this? It takes the workload off of me, but it also empowers the author. So that's something that I've learned, and it's working really well. Instead of just automatically changing something that I don't agree with or if it doesn't sound good. And a lot of time it gets the author's
It's
juices
again,
flowing. Go ahead.
right. It's not for me as editor to agree or disagree.
Right.
What I tend to do is I will reflect back to you. Like if you write
Exactly.
something, I'm making this up, but like something about like, uh, you know, the civil rights movement of the 60s was not successful. It was terrible and nothing ever happened. I will just simply write a note or like you say in a comment,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll say, first of all, look at that. Is that accurate that
Mm-hmm.
nothing happened in the 60s?
Right.
And that there was no success at all. And if that's
Right.
what you want to go with, fine.
Sure.
Okay. Uh, no, because that's your thesis. That's what
Exactly.
you're arguing. And I only hope you can, and I would say in the note, I only hope you can prove it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
you know.
Right. For
And
sure.
and again, maybe you get a writer that doesn't want to prove it. Fine, it's their book,
Exactly.
you know. And a lot of times people misread when I say that. It's like, oh, so you take no responsibility, you don't care or anything. No, I give you my best suggestions. Okay. That's my responsibility is to make suggestions. I do what you hire me to do. If you want it proofed, I proof it.
Right.
And I will tell you, this word is maybe not a good word because this doesn't mean what you're trying to say. And I've had people argue with me over that. It's like, well, that's that. I know what I'm saying. That's the word that I want. And that's the way I want to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. Okay.
Right.
You know,
Exactly. Exactly.
but
Not taking it personally, and again, leaving the power in the hands of the author. That I definitely recommend those for editors, proofreaders, and thank you so much for reiterating that. So I definitely enjoyed our conversation. I'm so glad that you were a guest. I would love for you to tell our listeners where they can get in touch with you if they're interested in your services and or your books.
okay. Wow. The services is on my site, vgrights.com. And again, when they go to that site, they will very good at setting it up. But they will see that everything it says it's negotiable. So what that basically means is when I see the project, each project is done differently.
Right.
It's, and it's based on work and time and number of words, number of
Right.
pages, that type of thing. So, uh, you'll get a sense of what I will do and can do, and you'll have some terminology. There's a difference between a developmental edit and a
Yes.
cleanup. There's a
Yes.
difference between a major edit, okay, and a developmental edit. So they'll get the terminology.
Okay.
Um, Also, I do more than editing. I also sometimes consult. So if you have an
Okay.
idea and you would want to know, okay, well, what would you suggest I do to flesh out this idea? Okay, we can talk about that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's consulting, and I do that at an hourly rate.
Okay.
Um, so vgrights.com. For my own works, you can go to Amazon. Uh, Actually Amazon, uh, Barnes and Noble. I mean, I'm all over the place. But
Awesome.
Amazon is a quick resource. There's also a website uh, that the Golphin collection.com.
Okay.
And Golphin, of course, is spelled Golphin. Collection, the Golphin Collection, all one word, .com.
So thank you.
Okay. As far
Okay.
as phone numbers, those are on the sites, so you can contact me there. And
Fantastic.
then one last thing,
Okay.
and then if you're into email, just email thebookdoctor@vgrights.com.
Thanks so much, Vincent. Again, thank you for sharing your expertise, the recommendations that you offered to our listeners, also being honest about your experience and just all of the valuable information that you provided to us. And thank you all for listening. Again, Editor Knows Best airs every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, anchor.fm/Editor Knows Best. Thank you all for listening. Be safe and be well, everyone.